Okay, so welcome to, what is the name of this panel? When Cartoons Grew Up. This is something that I felt very comfortable talking about cartoons because I never seemed to grow up. And I'd like to know when cartoons did. The question before the panel started was, what am I defining cartoons as growing up? And I'm actually gonna I'm gonna pull up my first slide in the slideshow, except I'm not. Here we go. Because in 1988, something very special happened in the cinema that pulled everything from the classic era of animation together and reminded people what was so special about it. And that, I don't believe, did that come up yet? No,
I see Roger Rabbit.
I see Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, so that was 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you're as old and grouchy as I am, then you grew up on cartoons airing all the time on television, where you had Woody Woodpecker and you had the Bugs Bunny cartoons and Popeye and the Mighty Mouse and everything, and it was always geared towards children. The truth is, those cartoons were never specifically for kids. Chuck Jones was asked what was the audience that he did his cartoons for, and he said, for me. Like everybody who had his sense of humor, he figured would enjoy the cartoons, and so that was he was really just doing it for his own benefit, and they found an audience. But somewhere along the way, we got it stuck in our heads that because kids relate to them so much that it must be specifically for them, and this is not the case. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out in 1988, and Roger Ebert was referring to it as an adult movie, even though it was animated, despite the fact that kids went to see it. Has anybody not seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit? All right, let me go back to my meeting controls. I'm going to stop the sharing so I can see what's going on in the chat. So I think that was kind of the start of it. What happened right after that was television started to explode. When the Fox network first came onto the scene, which was right around that time, it was considered the fourth network because people weren't paying any attention to PBS. Now, over the next decade, we got the Golf Channel and several CNN channels and the Quilting Channel and just all manner of TV channels. And with that, the animation also exploded along with it. Let me share this screen. I'm having to click on too many things here. There we go. And so here's where we have put up Beauty and the Beast, because it was the first animated movie to be nominated for an Academy Award. We had the incredible Batman the Animated Series. Of course, Fox had their first hit with The Simpsons. And in the 90s, anime really took off. And I took that little warning down there, which I don't think you can see. It says, warning, absolutely not for children. If you'd ever been to a video store in the 90s when anime first took off, you would find these titles with this label on it, warning, absolutely not for children. And you would ignore them. And then you would be changed forever. They probably should say, warning, absolutely not for anyone. But so I think this was kind of the start of the change in animation, where there was a push for adults to come in and enjoy cartoons, where the powers that be previously, I don't think, had paid any attention to them. But you know, I don't want to just talk the whole time, so I'll open it up to any thoughts from anybody You can put in anything in the chat, and if you have a microphone, you can turn it on and gab with us.
Okay, well, I have a thought.
Okay.
So I feel like Beauty and the Beast broke a lot of ground for cinema because not only was it the first animated film to get nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture, but also this was the first animated film where a studio specifically geared it for both adults and children. Disney sat there and said, okay, we're going to gear it for both. And, before then, if an animated movie just happened to catch an adult's eye, great. But before then, that was never the goal. The goal was always to catch the children's eye, easy money. But Beauty and the Beast set out and they made sure to do certain posters to catch the adult's eye. And a lot of adults automatically took their children thinking, oh, it's a Disney movie, they'll like it, including my mom. And a lot of adults came out of there very surprised as to how much they liked it. Again, including my mom. My mom walked out of that theater thinking, that was a good movie. So I feel like Beauty and the Beast really broke a lot of ground for cinema when it came to animation, and that, hey, it's not just for children. And that's my opinion.
Anybody else?
I think Disney in general kind of opened up for more adults to get in, especially all the big movies like, of course, Beauty and the Beast, obviously, but also no one can forget The Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Basically, in the big blockbuster Disney movies that are turning into reboots right now, had a decent adult following when they came out too, because they were like, oh my God, this is really good. In fact, you can still play those movies today, at least the original cartoons, and most people would stop what they're doing just to watch it if it was on. That's the kind of power they have.
You get to a movie like Hunchback of Notre Dame, where one of the most memorable songs is called Hellfire, and you're like, this is not the Cinderella Disney.
Yeah.
Man, you got to hand it to them for pushing the envelope a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and share my my slide 3.
While you're doing that, I was thinking too, probably Aladdin was the first Disney movie that I went to as an adult. And it was definitely one that the jokes, and a lot of it was because of Robin Williams' ad-libs, but the kids didn't get most of his humor in that. They laughed because the expressions on the animated face were funny or because crazy things were happening around him. But the adults got to laugh because the jokes were hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you got a point, man.
And
oh
God, sorry.
Okay, sir. My bad.
No, go ahead.
Maybe we could say they start growing up when they insert adult jokes in there that kids wouldn't get in movies, and that's probably what got more adults' attention. Like, have you ever watched the old cartoon called the Rugrats?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. If you rewatch the Rugrats, there's a lot of adult jokes that I definitely didn't get when I was 10 or a little kid.
There were, yes.
Well, and also in mentioning Aladdin, that had a trickle-down effect through the following Disney movies, because that was like the first time they really cast an A-list celebrity as sort of a spotlight character in their movies. And ever since then, you can kind of go through, okay, this is the genie character in Hunchback. You got James Woods as Hades, which is pretty much a movie Genie directed, and so that there's at least that one character that the older audiences are specifically going to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
As we got towards the end of the 2000s, and I didn't put a Pixar movie in this batch, but they started, they were doing Toy Story, And of course, Toy Story 2, where it had that heavy-handed subplot with Jessie. And I don't think that is something that even Disney of the time would have touched. Meanwhile, we had Cartoon Network that was producing original material. I know a lot of people loved Samurai Jack because of its ongoing story arcs. There are people who live and breathe Futurama. And we finally got some of the Hayao Miyazaki films in theaters, like Princess Mononoke, which is absolutely not for children, but not to the degree that those videos with the labels on them were absolutely not for children. And then we got Robot Chicken, which is humor that I think is not intended to have any appeal for children at all. So this was sort of an experimental period because we had so many channels and so many more outlets and so many animation companies springing up. They get to try things out. Does anybody have any favorite cartoons that, if not put up there, or anything to say about the?
I liked Gravity Falls.
Oh yeah,
Gravity Falls.
good taste.
Now, was this before or after King of the Hill? Because, you know, King of the Hill was huge.
Mm-hmm. That was a good show.
Yeah, it was. I think it was late '90s, most of the 2000s. I never watched it regularly. Let me see. Steve had also made a comment. Also, the soundtracks were geared towards adults more towards adults by then, which reminds me of a Goofy movie. It had those two amazing Tevin Campbell songs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
awesome.
Tevin Campbell is very underrated still.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring us up to slide 4. I have to keep clicking on the wrong thing. There we go. As we crossed the 2010s, what I noticed was even movies that were geared towards children really started to bring in a lot more complicated elements than the stories we would teach kids of days gone by. Megamind was one of those movies, the original script was going to be an adult animated movie. And then they toned it down to make it family friendly, but it's still a very deeply emotionally written movie. And you see that in a lot of studios outside of Disney. And my argument with that is, I think the concept of, or the world of mental health really started to take hold, and that became reflected in a lot of our animated films. Like The Grinch, that movie, he clearly had some sort of an undiagnosed issue, and it was reflected in his feelings towards Christmas. And it was, my story about The Grinch was, Jenny and I went to see it in a theater full of 8-year-olds. And the entire time I'm thinking, I'm bracing myself for that kick in the gut that I know this movie is going to give me. And it didn't do that. About Act 1, it just kind of put its feet right where my solar plexus is. And in Act 2, it just kind of reminded me that they're there. And then in Act 3, it just started pushing and pushing. And in the movie, I'm like, I'm not going to lose it in front of this theater of 8-year-olds. And Jenny was like, are you okay? Fine. Then one of my all-time favorite movies of this past decade was Inside Out. The question, do emotions have emotions?
Is it okay if I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, by the way, I'm Jenny. That's my nickname. But about Megamind, that had so many jokes in there that you have to go back and watch it a second time or a third time just to catch all the jokes. There were just so many, and they were so funny. They were so well written. They didn't talk down to the audience at all. It wasn't this gross out toilet humor. They were very smart jokes. And not only that, but it was, like he said, very deeply emotional. There was one part of the movie where Sean turned to me and he said, I don't know where this movie is going, but I'm excited. I mean, it really went in a route where we weren't expecting, but we liked it. And so it was definitely a movie for both kids and adults, and it touched on a lot of very serious issues. Some of them that probably can't be talked about in this panel, but I feel like that's one that, I don't know, just people kind of missed at the time, but if you can find that movie, we highly recommend it.
Madeline,
I missed that one, so I'm going to have to go look for it now.
Please do.
yeah, it got overshadowed by Despicable Me because they were similar in concept, but I think Megamind was, I think it was much more solid.
Yeah.
I think
Madeline,
I was just old and didn't really pay attention to anything anime, you know?
Madeline inserted a comment, I cry more at animated movies than any other genre. And that's a question I kind of like to throw out there. I think a lot of us do. Why is that?
I think maybe the artistry just evokes it more. Like, you know, for example, in Up, there were so many like just beautiful scenes and just incredible artistry and just it would just tie in, you know, all of your senses with your emotions.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I cried when Bing Bong died in Inside Out.
Oh my God, yes.
Parts of that movie was really sad.
I think Steve was talking, but
I was trying, but my mic would not unmute. I think too, it may have something to do just with the genre itself, because even if you know you're watching an animated piece that is geared toward an older audience, it's still an animated piece. And so maybe you're watching the artistry, you're watching all of that stuff, and then when something heavy hitting hits you, you're still maybe not completely expecting that to happen.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. I also feel like the voice actors, because they're in such a confined space, you can't see them, you can't see their facial expressions, and they can just pour their heart and soul out into what they're doing, and more so than if the cameras were on them, and then they can just have more freedom to express themselves when they're voice acting, and they can give more to that vocal performance.
That's another interesting point, because back in the 90s, once anime took over, we had this surge of people going into voice acting, like intentionally doing it and saying, this is going to be my profession. So Mel Blanc was a comedic performer who just kind of fell into it when Looney Tunes happened. And of course, he's remembered as one of the all-time greats, but in that period, there were really only a handful of names that kept showing up over and over. Now people are on a waiting list to audition for Funimation Studios.
Well, and I think too, probably the video game industry helped lend itself to that, because there are plenty of voice actors who their faces have never been seen on screen, but we recognize their voices because they're in the animated things, they're in the video games, and it's a career.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Casey Kasem, who just happened to get into doing Robin and doing Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. That wasn't his career. That was something that he fell into.
We watched a video recently. It was about the power of the subconscious mind, and they said when you're a child, you develop your subconscious mind from about like ages of 4 to around 11 or 12, and before you really develop like the conscious, having to, okay, I can't do this right now because I need to do this, and that affects this. And the subconscious mind is very associated with creativity and emotions. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why animation, because most of the time it is very creative people who are working on it, fill it with those same emotions, and why it resonates for pretty much any age bracket. Go to my last slide. These are the more current ones. Archer, I admit I've never seen, but I know it's highly respected, at least the first handful of seasons were. Then down the bottom corner was the Scooby-Doo crossover with Supernatural, which is the most adult that Scooby-Doo has ever gotten. And
Oh my God, yes.
I'm still amazed that they were able to convince whoever is in charge of Scooby-Doo's, what's the word I'm looking for? Whoever's in charge of Scooby-Doo was willing to let go of it for the purpose of that episode. And then we've got the big one, BoJack Horseman. Has anybody, who has seen BoJack Horseman?
Yo,
You know I have.
multiple times now.
I have not.
I haven't either.
It's on Netflix. It is a show that specifically deals with adult themes like alcoholism,
Fiction in general.
mental health, someone who was famous at one point and isn't, and how they're unable to adapt to a life outside of Hollywood fame. And every time you think, okay, the show is kind of peaked, they're like, no, we've still got something else that we can pull out from under your feet. So the show is, but even for an adult show like BoJack, they still lapse into these very childlike moments where they rattle off these tongue twister lines, and they have these golden age of Simpsons type jokes, because these are anthropomorphic animals where you see this throwaway shot where the people are taking a possum into the hospital. They think he's dead, and then the possum sits up and startles them. But so I don't think we've answered the question. When did cartoons grow up? Did they grow up? Did they ever need to grow up?
Sean, I was thinking about it when I saw the topic for this panel. If you go way back, I mean, and honestly, none of us actually are old enough to remember this, but in the very beginnings, Bugs Bunny dealt with a lot of, reality as it was right then. They had the Hitler episodes, and there was a lot of really violent stuff happening in animation even back then. They actually toned it down for kids later on, but they would never show today a lot of the animated stuff from the Bugs Bunny and that genre of cartoon, because it wouldn't be accepted.
Yeah, I agree. I remember growing up, I'm 55, so I remember, some of the things that we used to watch, thinking back and like, oh my God, they would never air that anymore.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of those studios were actually commissioned by the Department of the Army and Air Force and everything to make animated pieces to show the troops, to really drive home some of the issues that people were uncomfortable talking about in their training sessions. They would do an animated piece with, animated stars that we know now as being funny on things like trench foot. And so, in that era, a lot of people didn't really expect that those animated pieces were for kids.
No, I didn't know that.
There was a short film that Disney did about Donald Duck having a dream that he was a Nazi. They have not re-aired it, but I've seen it. It won an Academy Award, and at the end he wakes up and he says, "Oh boy, I'm so glad to be a citizen of the United States of America." And Oh boy, it's definitely deep, and it, like I said, it would not be replayed today.
Yeah, it's incredibly dark.
Oh my god, I have to find that.
I think it's
It's
Defuhrer's
It's
face.
on YouTube.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
I'm googling that now.
Me too.
Does anybody have, let's see, earlier Madeline mentioned Eon Flux, which is something I actually considered putting on the slides and then I just forgot. But yeah, MTV did that one, didn't they? I think they had a series called Liquid TV or Liquid Television, and it was, I guess, kind of the precursor to Adult Swim.
And they had Daria.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Daria dealt with a lot of crap.
Oh, yeah, she did.
That was a cartoon ahead of its time, I feel.
Yes.
Truly ahead of its time.
Anybody have a particular cartoon, either movie, TV show that we haven't mentioned?
I do. It's definitely not for kids. Aqua Teen Hunger Force is one of my absolute favorite shows.
Great taste, ma'am. Great taste.
It may not be for kids. It may not be for kids, but every con I go to, you see cosplayers that are like 13 to 14 years old dressed as those characters.
I have to admit, I started watching it when I was like, I'm pretty sure I was in middle school when I started watching it. And when I got my first job, when I was like 17, I bought my brother a DVD set of the first season. So, and he was 7 years younger than me. So, so yeah, I was a little young when I started watching it, but I still love going back to it. It's so ridiculous.
Oh, and Avatar, that was a good one.
Notes.
What I wanted to bring up was Invader Zim. That one was pretty dark. That one was, I think, appealed more to a teenage adult audience. I don't think kids really got into that one. That one has had a cult following since then.
Yeah, my son used to watch that one all the time.
Good stuff. It's good stuff. I mean, you can't really be a little alien dude hanging out in the middle school. And one episode, he takes all the kids' organs and stuff it inside himself. Definitely, definitely a line right there. It crossed.
I remember the joke he made where Dib had his eyes closed. He's like, "Oh, you'll open them. You'll have to breathe sometime." And he goes, "Wait, what do you mean? Oh!" And he opened his eyes.
I could have a good cartoon that's too adult. And if you want to throw foreign things in the cartoon genre that are definitely not for kids, and of course, anime. There's certain animes that are just definitely not meant for children to watch.
That's one of the things that I think has affected our animation today is the fact that late 80s, early 90s, we got to see what animation could do and how a very funny anime could also, at the drop of a hat, become incredibly serious. And it could deal with all of these different kinds of emotions from scene to scene. So it didn't just have to be a comedy. It didn't just have to be a tragedy.
Well, Spirited Away is a great example. I mean, that was fabulous.
And a lot of the Miyazaki movies, I think, that kind of changed the way that we thought about what animation can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that Island of Dogs one a couple years back, that was intense. I mean, you never thought you would go to something that, just was all subtitles and it didn't look like it was going to be a great movie, and you just like walked out bawling. It was crazy.
we've got an anime movie club that we've been doing since we went into quarantine here, and I forgot what the name of the movie was that we watched, but it was set in around Hiroshima, around the bombings, and Melanie, who's in charge of the program, she was like, "Did that movie tear you up as much as it tore me up?" And I'm like, "Yes, I was protecting myself through the entire movie, and then right at the end, it's like, okay, that got me right there."
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, about animated ones that were actually released, I guess more because it was more feasible to make them animated than it would have been to try to do anything live action that made any sense. And you had Heavy Metal and Rock and Roll, which were both, I think one of them was in '81, the other one was in '83. And, terrific soundtracks, but, definitely not a kid's movie.
Yeah, I remember Heavy Metal, it felt kind of like it was a series of music videos. Although Heavy Metal 2000, that one came out around the same time as Titan AE, and I remember wanting to promote Heavy Metal 2000 because this has a villain with a clear motivation and a story that you don't have to keep asking, well, okay, why are they doing this? Whereas Titan AE was beautiful, but it was also, I was confused by that plot.
One cartoon or animated show that really gets me, and I don't know if any of y'all saw me last year, but I'm like the resident Star Wars girl. So is the Clone Wars. Oh my God. Like the number of times that I've cried watching the Clone Wars is insane. Just the way the music is, the story beats they're able to tackle, like it gets so deep and so intense, and it's gorgeous. And oh my God, I love that show so much. Just when that intro music starts up, I'm always like, oh my God. So it gets me every time. But it's a really beautiful show.
Kristen, who's in charge of the Sci-Fi Festival, absolutely loves Clone Wars, and every time we start talking Star Wars, like, "Have you seen Clone Wars?" "No, I haven't seen Clone Wars yet."
It's
I think she
so
feels like
good.
it's the apex of Star Wars.
It's, yeah, because they're able to take it to like metaphysical realms, and it's a little deeper and more convoluted, and there's also the political episodes and the funny episodes, and it like you were saying, like it takes all the different emotions and covers all of them throughout its seasons. So that's really cool.
I kind of feel like we're in sort of a new golden age of animation where a showrunner can pitch an idea and get it approved, and they can say, "Well, I want to do something. I want to do this. I haven't seen this done before," and they're allowed to not have to shoehorn in. Okay, no, it's got to have this moral for this audience. And has anybody seen the Green Eggs and Ham animated series on Netflix?
I have.
The weird thing about that is, I thought it was very entertaining, but I don't know who it's supposed to be for, because I don't think kids would watch it and connect with it. And I don't think adults, unless you're a Dr. Seuss enthusiast like me, would ever track it down and think, okay, this is something I want to watch. What did you think?
Well, I'm not really a Dr. Seuss enthusiast by any means. I will say I like the Grinch and the cat. Those are my Dr. Seuss things. When I first saw Green Eggs and Ham, I knew about the little kids book. I even had it as a kid and lost it somewhere. I was like, no way they can make 12 episodes off a book. That's like 10 pages, 10 or 15 pages. So I was like, I gotta see what you're gonna go with this. And I just kind of dig all the world building. I mean, I think that's what really hooked me into how they will order food, how they answer phone calls, when just walking and reading the newspaper was ridiculous. Or riding a train. There's a train car in the train that's a miniature version of the train you're on, and it's just mind blowing. And only in Dr. Seuss that makes sense.
I loved it when a guy was he'd gotten his invention rejected, and like everybody else got theirs approved, and so they're outside his hotel room doing this conga line, and he shuts the window on when and then they start chanting, "You can still hear us."
I dig it. They also gave more character to, my little man than the book I ever thought in the book. Period. I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, I would recommend giving it a shot. It's definitely will throw you for a loop.
It's an
no
oddity.
spoilers here.
Well, I think with sci-fi, also, we didn't talk about spin-offs. I mean, we talked about Clone War, but, now we've got Doctor Who, separate little spin-offs that are anime, and just about anything now that comes out. If somebody wants to do a side story on, they'll just pick it up. And they'll just create, their own kind of side world, and it does and does not tie into the main, but it's certainly entertaining, and it's made for adults.
I have to admit, the animated episodes for Doctor Who, some of those, the animation was almost a distraction for me, because the Brits aren't really famous for excellent animated work in the first place. And I am distracted if animation quality isn't there. It's hard for me to pay attention to the storyline.
I'll give you that one. But if you think back, I don't know, you're as old as I am, and you watch the original Doctor Who's and how bad the acting and the actual side, the effects were there. The animation is not as bad as that.
Yeah, I actually went back and watched the 4 episodes of was it the Gunslingers, the OK Corral series from back then, and the music was horrible, and they carried that one song through 4 episodes, and it was difficult to continue watching after about episode 2.
One of the other fun things that I find about animation today is when you go onto YouTube, individual content creators can do flash animation and tell some pretty well scripted stories. There's the How It Should Have Ended series, which I think is the funniest thing on YouTube ever. There's Only Lee, who does some really high quality shorts. Can't think of any others off the top of my head. But there's the death battles, which they really do put a lot of time into. It's where they take 2 characters like Batman versus Spider-Man, and they say, okay, they're going to fight to the death. What the rule is that they have to be willing to kill each other, even if it goes against their character code. And the other rule is if they've never encountered each other before, then when they fight, they don't know anything about what the other one can do. And those get to be really elaborate. And it's like a great convention videos.
I wanted to add something else too. So Star Wars Resistance, which only lasted 2 seasons, in the season finale of the first season, you see what happened in The Force Awakens take place, where Starkiller Base destroyed Hosnian Prime. And in the animated show Star Wars Resistance, the main protagonist of the show, his family lives on Hosnian Prime, and you get to see Starkiller Base destroy Hosnian Prime in animation, and I bawled my eyes out. Now, when I saw Force Awakens, I didn't bat an eye. I was like, okay, like, I don't really know how I'm supposed to feel about this. But when I watched it in animation with a character that I had grown to care about, it was so powerful. And so I think that's really cool what animation can do to expand upon the story that's already there.
And on one of the I'm sorry, what did you say?
That just made me think. I think when people do, say, the real life adaptation of versus the animation, we tend to make mistakes story wise. Like in The Force Awakens, a lot of it, power scale wise, didn't make a lot of sense. If we're being honest, and that just kind of took me out of it. But those mistakes are rare and far between in animated Star Wars. So I can get more invested. Like, yeah, you do it, man. I can believe that you can beat this. Kylo Ren just, he can stop lightsaber, like laser beams in mid-flight, and obviously it's better of the Force than other people. But someone just picked up a lightsaber the other day and you just go toe to toe in a fight. It just makes no sense. But that's my opinion on that.
Remember, there was a running commentary on a Simpsons episode where they said that was one of the advantages of animation is the script can say, cut to Homer on top of a mountain. And it was as simple to do that as it was to cut to him at work. Whereas in live action, you got to either build a mountain in the studio or you have to go to a mountain and film it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to one of the advantages of animation as a medium is sometimes the stories are so extreme, and whether it's just the complexity of what's being described or, like you said, sets and locales, they can do it with animation and it doesn't cost any more.
I thought it was interesting, one of the reactions to the remake of The Lion King, they said that the animals depicted as realistic, you lost a lot of their personality because you don't have those exaggerated animated expressions that really carry the emotion. They're like, it's a technically brilliant film, but it doesn't really let you know who these animal characters are.
Yes, I agree with that.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
I never thought about it, but I'd agree.
Yeah. But I will go ahead and now invert that for you. If you've seen both the animated and the quote live action Pete's Dragon, the live action one is much more of a tearjerker to me than the animated one was.
I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, that one's on my must list. I just realized I have been doing this whole panel with Madeline's name on my profile.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah.
And we were all too kind to even say anything about it.
Yep.
I didn't want to assume, everybody's transitional.
I'm cosplaying as Madeline for the festival.
Did I hear laughing?
Well, let's see. We've got the chat room till 8. I know usually panels last about 45 minutes. Anybody have any closing thoughts on the topic?
Please check out Megamind. Please, you guys will not regret it.
I will. Somebody sent the link, so thanks.
Oh yeah, Yeah, Madeline put the link to.
Thank you, Madeline.
Yeah, I've already checked and seen that it's available, I guess, on YouTube and I think Amazon as well. You said they're rentals. It's not on free stream for either one of them.
Good to know. I wonder if it's on Hoopla too, though. I'll have to look. Anybody from the library know if it's on Hoopla?
Madeline's looking right now. She says she doesn't think it's on Hoopla. She's checking.
My Hoopla just stopped working. I don't know. This says there's something wrong with my library card, so maybe it's expired. But I'm missing it in this quarantine.
Well, I mean, when we're technically open, you can call any of the desks and we can check that for you.
Yeah, it's not. It's only on DVD.
I forgot what we were talking about. What was it?
Megamind.
Megamind. Okay, yeah, it's only on DVD.
So how is the library handling stuff like that? Like, can I actually go in and get the DVD, or do I have to call and somebody brings it out, or how does that work?
You can put it on hold, and we, at the moment, I mean, I realize this is being recorded, so this may change whenever anybody else looks at it, but right now you can actually come in during our open hours and come up to the circulation desk, and they can run over to the hold shelf and grab it for you.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, well, I guess we never did figure out exactly when cartoons grew up. Madeline thinks they've always been grown up.
I agree.
I think that's sort of where I'm going to lean too.
Yeah.
I can agree with that as well.
Agree with that.
Yeah.
It's like asking, when does creativity grow up? It's its own entity.
That's an oxymoron, yeah.
I like that phrase. I'm going to steal that.
So then whose dumb idea was the title of this panel then? All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I think this was a really fun panel. This year we are in uncharted territory with the virtual festival, so it's exciting to see I think this is our first day of this, and that anybody turned out for it. I'm really pleased. And I hope you'll come back and check out some of the other programs that we have. I'll be posting, I'm part of a Monty Python panel that we already recorded, and we're going to be posting tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And like I said, we've got the virtual breakout room and the text-based game on www.hplscifi.com. So you can play those from home. On Saturday from like 2:30 to 4, Aubrey and I will be doing a geek chat together, and she created the breakout room and I created the text adventure. So if you got any questions about either one of those, we'll be together and we can give you whatever spoilers you need. Anything, Madeline, that you can think of that I need to announce?
No, I've dropped a link for the tracks. So
Okay.
they can go through and see what we're going to be offering and the dates for those.
Madeline's dropped a link for the tracks in the chat, and our website has all the information for the rest of the week.
What
Can I
is the
make a
game?
quick-
Go ahead.
Sorry. I don't know. I was just gonna say we're doing a Clone Wars panel on Friday. So if anyone's interested, Friday night, I'm part of a Clone Wars panel. So, yay!
Yeah, I have to be on that one because I need to harass Rhett.
What is the game about? Like, is it something that like is a game that like people are playing? Is this something new, or is this something I could just drop in on?
You know, are you talking about the online games?
Yeah.
Okay, the online breakout room is called Petty Theft, and it's a single player thing, and it's not timed, so you can just kind of go in and casually explore. The Spire is the text-based game. I don't know if you've ever played a Zork game, but it's in that style, and it's a similar concept where you're just you or whoever you feel like being you find an open cave and start exploring, and weird things happen, and hopefully you get intrigued by what it's all leading up to.
Okay.
And there's
they're-
the links to both to Spire. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming. I hope to see you all again sometime this week.
Yeah, cool.
And
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you. You enjoyed it.
That's fun.